Thank you very much, Your Excellency Albert Muchanga. And let me observe all protocols. The President of Zambia, represented by the Finance Minister, Jeffrey Sachs, the Minister from Angola, the UNECA, represented by Hanan Morsi, and also Ms. Chido Mpemba, African Union Youth Envoy. All protocols observed. I would like to, on behalf of the President of the African Development Bank, first apologize for his, express his regrets for not being able to join us. He's actually currently should be airborne, heading here for the summit. So he asked that I communicate his full support to this report, this study, which was requested by His Excellency Musa Faki Muhammad, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, and endorsed by our president, President Akinwumi Adesina. The reason for this report are obvious. Already in the presentation we had in the first session on the Africa's macroeconomic performance and outlook, we have underscored the fact that Africa is growing on a positive trajectory of 3.8% and around 4% for the next 2-3 years in the medium term. But as already stressed by Professor Jeffrey Sachs and President Adesina in their remarks, to be able to pull people out of poverty in Africa, that growth rate is not good enough. As the Minister of Finance from Nigeria underscored, even though Nigeria is growing at a positive growth rate, that growth rate in GDP is similar to the growth rate in population growth rate. And until our countries grow at far higher growth rates in GDP than the growth rates in population, per capita income is not going to improve. And you're going to see poverty still deepening, and people often ask me, what does GDP actually mean when we are having positive reports on GDP, but in the same report, we are reporting that 15 million people were pulled into extreme poverty. In the same year, we are saying that the GDP growth rate is positive. So this is the reason why we are focused now on addressing one of the key recommendations of the Macroeconomic Performance and Outlook report to work with global stakeholders, experts, our finance ministers and leaders, former and current, youths and women of Africa, captains of the private sector, and development partners to identify those key actions that it will take for Africa to grow at double the growth rates we have now, which is from 7 to 10% growth rate for the next 40 years, coincidentally matching the Agenda 2063. Reason is because we've looked around the world, we've studied the literature, and economic development literature does show us that unless countries grow at that 7 to 10% growth rate annually and consistent over 4 to 5 decades, it's difficult to get out of poverty and achieve other sustainable development goals. So this, since this is just speaking on behalf of the President, not going into the main presentation, I would end here by just underscoring that this study is crucial and is a critical part of implementing the recommendations that we see from studies everywhere. We have seen countries that have achieved this, both in Africa and elsewhere, but sometimes we see that those in Africa grow for 2 decades and we see some failed take-ups. So in the main presentation, I will dwell a little bit more on the rationale for the study. But thank you so much for those joining us online. This study is being done by global experts, a lot of people from the United States, from Africans in the diaspora, the African Development Bank Group leadership staff from several complexes of the staff, the African Union Commission, AUDA NEPAD, and as many other people that we are still also going to pull in order to ensure that we have a robust study and we identify actionable, implementable, recommendations that will have multiplier effects for addressing that, the slowdown in growth that we have been talking about. So with that, I would like to again re-emphasize President Adesina's full support to this study, and thank you all for coming, and hand over the floor to the moderator. Thank you.